Darin, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because we also hear you're on TV, so we would also like a little more information about that.
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Georgia with a banking and finance degree, and I actually mortgages kind of happened just sort of randomly, to be honest with you. It was, I wanted to be a bond trader, and that was my goal. Had internships all lined up to be a trader, and I graduated in 2002. So if you can imagine, after 9/11 in 2001, Wall Street wasn't quite the same. Internships were falling through, and frankly, I just literally took the first job out of college that was offered to me, and it happened to be in the mortgage industry in 2002. And I had some pretty immediate success, mostly because I understood the terminology, understood the lingo, and was able to communicate well with borrowers. I had the ability to help describe and help them understand what the time value of money was, how they can restructure their debt. And so again, just kind of had some immediate success. And, from there, I was given a team, and, several years running through the company I was with at that particular time, and running a team. Just like a lot of small business and entrepreneurs, I saw that things could be done differently. And at that time, this was well before the Dodd-Frank bill, well before a lot of the major changes that came of the crash in 2007, 2008. There was really too much money being made per transaction, and in other words, they were being gouged. Consumers were being gouged on a regular basis, and it just didn't sit right with me. And that's how I just ended up leaving the company I was with, and getting into the branching business, and started as a business partner, and I were out of my house. I was in one guest room, he was in the other guest room, and during that time, it was, sort of counterintuitive that we had a successful mortgage business during the crash, but we did. We were able to, build the business to where I had people in my dining room, I had people in my family room, and finally, my wife was like, "This isn't going to work anymore. You need to get everybody out of my house." And on top of that, the real kicker was Bell South came and said, and this is how long ago it was, Bell South said, "I can't fit any more phone lines into your house." So we ended up moving out, and then the business continued to grow from there. We kept adding more and more loan officers. We were getting licensed in more and more states. And that was my first experience with branching. And this was, not MortgageRight. This was a different company back in 2007. And, had a lot of success, built the team, ebbs and flows of the mortgage industry. Most of the loan officers are commission only, and made it through all the different changes during the Dodd-Frank bill. And we saw, some, like I said, ebbs and flows, but again, we continued to grow. But what happened was the company that I was with was growing as well. And, our branch felt very neglected. I felt as though I was constantly having to go through my P&L and find mistakes, having to audit their P&L that they were providing to me. And, I just felt like there was nothing that was transparent. Everything that was being done, I felt sneaky, it felt shady. And it just got to the point where it wasn't comfortable to be working with that company at that time. And this was, again, at a different time where when we used to do branching, I had a side company, and, I had to be, and basically the setup was completely different than it is now. Now, of course, you have to be W-2 employee, but before I only had to show so much income on a W-2, and then, the majority of the income would be 1099 to my side company. So the structure was definitely a little bit different. And I'm certain, I can never really prove it, but I've definitely felt like I was being taken advantage of. Our branch was, and things were being overcharged, double charged. And again, I just felt like it wasn't transparent, and they definitely didn't have our back. And, fast forward several years later is when, I ended up with MortgageRight and the team over there. So that's a little bit of the background of how I got started, and really have been working in the mortgage industry as a loan officer and a producing branch manager really since 2007, and been with MortgageRight and since 2015.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it sounds like your career, it was like you kept making the steps to get where you are now. So whenever you were working for the company before MortgageRight and you were experiencing, this lack of transparency and these bad feelings, and tell me about how you first heard about MortgageRight, or tell me how you first heard about MortgageRight and then BranchRight, and how that helped facilitate just your interest in wanting to leave where you were.
So yeah, originally, Mike Russo is the one who put me in contact with MortgageRight and the guys over at MortgageRight, Tanner Allen, Chris Carter, and Joe Meadow. And immediately they were just sort of starting out and creating this branching business that they now have. And it really felt like you were part of something just new and from the ground up, and that you could take advantage, and not take advantage of, but just be a part of something special from the very beginning. And the guys the principals at MortgageRight, they're down to earth guys. They're just great guys to be around. They're great guys to go have a beer with. They're great guys to talk football with. And so you just felt like not only did they have your back, but they felt like they were your friends. They were, and fast forward, 9 years later, I mean, when you talk to them on the phone, it still feels like they're one of your closest friends, and almost a family type atmosphere. So that's how it got started. And, from the beginning, it was definitely, we don't have all the tools that we now have. So we had to, on the branch level, we had to sort of help create or give opinions on what was working, what wasn't working. And then, the guys determined, picked out of the advice that we all gave to them, all the different branches that started with them, picked the best parts and then implemented those into, what we now have, which is called DiscoverRight. Which DiscoverRight is sort of our intranet, which allows us to pull marketing material, get information from our, all the underwriting guidelines, access all the different HR tools that are out there, and just a one-stop shop for your loan officers and your processing staff to access, so you as a branch manager aren't having to field those questions all the time, and you can continue to focus on what you do best, and that is creating relationships, developing business partners and referral partners, building your brand, building your branch's brand, helping build the MortgageRight brand. So that's kind of hopefully that answers your question. I just didn't ramble on, but yeah, that's how it got started. And, again, Russo put me, I call him Russo. I don't call him Mike. We call him Russo, but he put me in contact with them initially. And like I said, it's just been a phenomenal match for me. And, throughout it's been, again, I had that struggled with the previous company where I just didn't feel like they had my back, didn't feel transparent. I've never felt that way with MortgageRight. And if I ever did feel like I was not getting the best interest rate or something was off on my P&L, I mean, you feel so comfortable to go speak with one of the principals and say, hey, listen, something's not sitting right with me. I mean, they stop what they're doing and they go figure it out for you, because the last thing they want is for you to be uncomfortable. They want, again, for you to focus your day on developing business, bringing mortgages in, bringing high level talent in, and focusing on what we're great at, and that's closing mortgages.
Well, you talked a bit about, the process of moving from where you were to MortgageRight. Can you give me a little bit more of just like what that process was like for you? You said you felt really supported by Russo and by Mike and the guys, but like, talk about a little bit about how that process was for you, especially with where you were before.
Yeah. So, there is definitely, when you are making that transition from one branching opportunity to the next, there's of course anxiety, because you have a pipeline of borrowers, of agents that have depended upon you to get these transactions closed. And, your worst nightmare is you not being able to get those closed, and you having a bad name, somebody talking bad about you and just kind of creating a negative atmosphere. And that was an enlightening experience, because there is a period where you have to transfer your license. You have to import all the new technology. You have to get familiar with the new technology, familiar with the new systems. But the support was there from the get-go. And, they had people in place. They had individuals in place to make certain that the transactions that you were bringing on were closing on time, were as your people were transitioning over, because again, some of the folks, it's going to take a little bit more time for them to process in, and I'm not saying weeks, and it might be a couple days, but, they may not have access to that whatever our loan origination or software is, or the MortgageRight, all the different tools. So they had people in place to make certain that that transition was as smooth as possible. They had people to answer questions. They had a processing staff to help help you and your transactions close. And, and then Mike and Alvaro are there to help answer those questions, and they're holding your file's hands, if you will, and making certain that they close as well. So not only do you have the support staff, you have the guys, Mike and Alvaro, working on your file as well to make certain that the transition is as smooth as possible, and you continue to close those transactions. So when that first month comes and you're getting ready to get paid, you're not missing a beat, and that paycheck is coming in on the 15th and on the 30th.
If you had transitioned with a different type of company, do you think that would have been the case? Or do you think really with MortgageRight, like this seamless, you didn't miss a paycheck, you didn't miss a transaction, like it's because of MortgageRight's culture, and specifically like BranchRight helping you make that move?
I mean, look, there is, who's going to listen to me? Of course, I've been with MortgageRight for this period of time, right? I know that, it's like, oh, I'm just co-in the company line. But I think when you actually get an opportunity to sit down with Tanner, you sit down with Chris, and sit down with Joe, and you feel that atmosphere that they've created, and that sort of that fellowship, that team atmosphere, that family atmosphere, they know, that from day one, they care, and not only care about you, but they care about your family and your friends and everybody that you associate with, because it's a reflection on them. And then if you are looked upon negatively in any form or fashion, it reflects upon them, and they take that to heart. And so they've really made it very, very simple to make the transition as easy as possible. Look, I can't sit there and tell you that somebody else's business would be a total nightmare, but I've heard rumors.
My next question was going to be what makes MortgageRight different, but I think you answered that beautifully with your last question. So let's back up a bit. Instead of let's zoom out of like the moment, or was there a moment or a specific event where your decision to become a branch manager was the right one? Like even before you were with MortgageRight, when you were like, yeah, this is what I want to do, even though you landed in this career, not from what you thought of starting when, you were beginning your career, but what was it about being a branch manager that you were like, yeah, this is the career for me?
So it allows you, I have that entrepreneurial spirit, right? That's what I am. I'm a nerd when it comes to data and understanding the Fed, understanding the mortgage process, understanding real estate statistics, and then being able to make moves, with all of that data that I've collected and I've understood and I've studied. And it allows me to make entrepreneurial moves, not only just for my team, but for me individually, right? So, I mean, it's given me the freedom to, put together a real estate portfolio, have a construction company, have access to a TV show that, without the successes that I've been afforded with the MortgageRight team if had that not taken place, I would not have been on their radar to be a part of that particular show. But I think, again, it allows you to sort of get the best of both worlds. And I know that's probably a cliche for a lot of people, but it does, because, I have an opportunity to run my business the way that I want it to be run. I have the support staff that is there that I don't have to really put in place. It's already put in place for me. So I can make those sort of decisions. I can make those moves on my own without having to get permission from somebody else. They really allow you to run your business. It's not just, you're not just an employee. And that, to me, is where that made the difference for me, and even when it was the other company, and not going down the initial path that I thought I was going to go down, having that entrepreneurial spirit and having that ability to run a business and develop a business into what it is now, checks all the boxes for what I envision my career to be.
And I think I can probably guess the answer of what you're going to say to this question, but for you personally, what does it mean to be successful in this space? And how does MortgageRight support your idea of success personally?
So, yeah, success is a lot of times just measured by cash, right? By what's in your bank account, by what's your P&L look like, what does your financial statement look like? The success to me is having a family that knows that no matter what, MortgageRight, the principals, Mike, Alvaro, they have my back. God forbid I were to go down in some form or fashion, I know that my family would be looked at. That's how comfortable I feel about what happens at MortgageRight and how much of a family atmosphere that is. So success is measured. Yeah, certainly it's been phenomenal run, and not just over the last couple of years. It's been a phenomenal run from the get-go with MortgageRight, and a lot of and a lot is owed to the support from MortgageRight. But yeah, success is just, I think, knowing that I have support. I have a family that can go do the things that we want to do. We've been able to make, generational type memories, by being part of MortgageRight, whether it's, it's doing events, going to some of the trips that, the branch managers have been on, going to family vacations that, the income that we've been able to generate from MortgageRight has allowed my family and I to go on. That's success. If you want to talk numbers, sure, I get it. Everybody has their own definition of success. And, some people may say, that is super cliche, but I don't know. That's what it is to me. It's just being, having the respect. And when people walk around and they know, and they see my MortgageRight sign on my building, they know that it's a first-class outfit. It's a first-class office, first-class loan officers, and people respect us. We may not get every transaction in the world, but they certainly respect us, and they know if we're going to go up against you, as far as the competition is concerned, and on interest rates or closing costs, they know they have to put out their best game. And ultimately what that does is that helps the consumer. So that's success to me. So MortgageRight has cultivated a successful environment, and I'm just thankful to be a part of it, really.
And regardless of anybody else's definition of success, it's fitting with yours. So that's really the most important part at the end. Well, I just want to back up and hear more about this TV show, just because I'm curious.
The show's been around for a while. It's called Financing the American Dream, but primarily it's been on the West Coast. San Diego is where it started, and they were out there for, I don't know, 4 years or so. Maybe around 17 is when they started, I think. And then, of course, COVID slowed them down, but they were still able to kind of get that, the production going, still do enough shows to continue the progress. And then over the last couple of years, they've really gone into all of these different territories, and Georgia being one of them. And, most folks in the mortgage industry know who Barry Habib is, and subscribe to what he does. And, I've been a subscriber to Barry for a long, long time, and followed along and really have changed how I am. Instead of just a, sort of a salesman, type mentality, really just become an advisor. And that's one of the things that he preaches. But he really put his support behind financing the American dream. And as it continued to expand, he was part of it, and they were looking for additional loan officers and branch managers throughout the country. And when they came to Georgia, it was kind of like, do what Barry says or do what Barry does kind of mentality. And of course I jumped on it right away. And luckily enough, I was one of the first in Georgia, and I saw the value in what they were doing, and was able to secure a one episode a month that airs on either Travel Channel, Fox Business, Bloomberg, or drawing a blank on the other network, Travel Channel, Bloomberg, Fox Business, sometimes CNBC, very rarely, but sometimes. And then, so it allows us to focus on, community, culture, lifestyle, and real estate, So it's been a phenomenal tool for me to reach more people, to have content that's already essentially created, so I can leverage that content into YouTube videos, Reels, Shorts, TikToks. I mean, you name it, right? So it's definitely been an asset for us, and it's been an unbelievable business card, if you will, for me to get into. Whether it's a builder, whether it's real estate agent, whether it's the Braves, which I'm getting ready to go talk with, so it's been a pretty awesome experience. And so we film only once a month, I'm always impressed. It always reminds me, now I get, when you film 5 hours for a 4.5 minute segment, it's always blows my mind. Now it makes more sense to me when my 5 hours is only 4.5 minutes. I can't even imagine doing a 2.5 hour movie or whatever, so it's definitely puts that in perspective. But no, it's been phenomenal. It airs once a month. My newest one is coming out usually around the middle of the month. I always find out 10 days or so prior to, but you can watch all my episodes on YouTube anytime you want.
Real quick, let's back up to your career arc. Like what, when you started out, what was your positions until you got to MortgageRight?
So originally I started out as essentially a cold caller, a pseudo loan officer, like a loan officer in training. And, for the folks that haven't been in the industry that long, I promise you probably were not required to make 300 outbound calls a day. I was, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was exciting to me. It was, it was a competition to me. And I played college athletics. So keeping somebody on the phone became like a challenge to me. And it just, it kind of allowed me to turn work into a competition, whether that's healthy or not, I'm not sure, but that's really what started it, and then and because of that, I was able to learn how to talk to somebody that didn't want to talk. Okay. They didn't want to talk to me. Of course not. Nobody wants to talk to me. And obviously it was even easier back then. Now nobody wants to talk to you, but at that point, then I became a loan officer. And what I realized though is, once I became a loan officer and was not required to make the outbound calls, you got paid more for the loans that you closed if you called the outbound call list. So for me, I was like, well, that makes sense. Let me just continue to call these outbound calls, and I got a larger commission on the outbound calls. So continue to just have success as a loan officer. And then, eventually became a team lead, and I had 12 loan officers on my team. There was 5 different teams at the company I was with. And, we were closing, 20 transactions a week at that particular time. It was definitely good times to be in the mortgage industry, and I was in my mid-20s and I was making great money. But again, then at that point, I saw just a lot of things that just weren't sitting right with how business was being done. And it really opened my eyes when I had a personal transaction. I say personal, it wasn't family or friend. It was just a transaction that we couldn't get done in-house, and I brokered it out. And when I brokered it out, I was able to see the commissions or the revenue actually at the revenue that was generated. And then therefore my commissions were much higher. And this was again before Dodd-Frank, when you could get paid, your commissions were based on your total revenue. And so when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. So first of all, there's a ton of money being made. We're getting very little of it. The consumer's paying all of it. And so it just kind of clicked where I can make more money, charge the consumer less. Everybody wins, at that particular time. And so that's when I moved from that particular company and became a branch manager. And that's when, again, we were working for that particular company. And then, what I didn't explain to you is there was a transition period from that company to MortgageRight, where I actually opened up my own shop here in Georgia, got licensed as a lender, got licensed in multiple states, and was closing transactions. Had warehouse lines set up, so we were able to fund on our own warehouse lines, and broker loans was set up with multiple different entities or different investors. And you know what I found myself doing? Working on getting loans sold off, working on HR, working on all the things that I absolutely despise. And when it became a point to, when Mike put me in contact with MortgageRight, it was just like the perfect timing. It again made sense. I did not have to worry about the HR. I didn't have to worry about compliance. All those tools were put in place for me. It was just a no-brainer. It doesn't matter how well you set up your company. If you decide to go that route, you're going to be involved in compliance. You're going to be involved in HR in some form or fashion. You're going to be involved and then the sales side. And then, all the different sides of the business. If you are setting up that company, you are going to be involved in that. And if you despise that, like I do, it wasn't right for me. It made total sense for me to make the move and go back to, the MortgageRight branching opportunity. And I've been there ever since. I've been, MortgageRight since, like I said, 2015. So that was my sort of evolution in the mortgage industry.
No matter who you are or what your experience is, like one person can only do so much. So why not do what you are best at and what you excel at? And, MortgageRight supports all the day-to-day things that aren't really getting you where you want to be. So during this process, when you decided then to go with MortgageRight, was there any difficulty? I know you said the transition was seamless, but were there any difficulties that you faced or challenges that you faced? And if so, like, talk a little bit about how MortgageRight supported you. If there's not a great situation during your transition, maybe like an issue that you faced since then.
There wasn't necessarily an issue with the transition. The issue was me believing in it. Me putting my trust in this team that, I knew, and I got an opportunity to meet, and I certainly had all the warm and fuzzy feelings going on, but I'm trusting you with my partnership. I'm trusting you with my referral partners. I'm trusting you with my clients. Yeah, that was the challenging part is sort of accepting and letting go for that short period of time. Because if you're like me, well, I'm sure a lot of branch managers are, you like to control everything. And in that scenario, you can't necessarily control every minute detail. And, that was the challenge for me. That was what the biggest challenge was is trust, as they say, that as the kids say these days, trust the process. That was something that, I struggled with, but I'm glad I did. And frankly, once you move forward, you don't have a choice. It's just a matter of, are you going to sleep or not? And so if you trust the process and know that the guys and girls at MortgageRight have your best interest at heart, which they absolutely do. I cannot say enough about, from the corporate processors to the underwriters, how much they care, to the principals, to the Discover Right team. I mean, everybody just cares. And they just want quality, good people. They're quality, good people, and they want to be surrounded by quality, good people. So that would be the issue, and I mentioned it before. I mean, if there's ever been, a product, a product or program or an investor that, you felt you really need to have, and it's going to be a tool that's going to help you close more transactions, all you got to do is ask. That's the best part about it, is if you just ask, they will listen. And not every single time it works out, but the majority of the time it does. Majority of the time they will stop what they're doing and make it happen. And you can't ask for anything more, in my opinion, as far as support goes. Like, what else? If they're willing to try, I mean, that's just life, right? You're not going to get everything you want, but at the same time, if they're willing to try to make it work for you, that is the dream. That's the dream partnership.
Yeah, I mean, it's the right kind of support, not making you any false promises, but putting 100% into, like, we're going to try it, or we're going to do this thing however you need, and we'll do it together.
Yeah.
Was there any advice or anything, like, Mike or anybody on the team said that motivated your decision to make this leap here to MortgageRight? Was there any specific conversation you had or a memory that you have?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but when you just said it, I immediately went to a conversation I had with Chris Carr. I actually have like chill bumps just thinking about it, and it wasn't even like this profound, statement. But what it was, I was talking with Chris Carter. Chris, he's one of the principals, and he said, "Man, don't stop what you're doing. We love what you're doing. Just keep doing your thing. We'll take care of the rest." That was it. That was the best piece of advice. And, again, you still have to have that trust, but that's what you want to hear. It's kind of like, coming from an ex-athlete, just go play hard. You know what I mean? That kind of mentality. Just go hustle, get out there and hustle. That's kind of the way it felt, when he said that. And maybe that's just my alligator brain, just want to hear that from the coach kind of thing. But no, that was great. That's all I needed to hear, and I was off to the races.
How have your experiences working with MortgageRight shaped your perspective on the mortgage industry? Because I'm sure being with MortgageRight has taken away some of those things, that you were talking about, like worrying about HR compliance, P&L, all that, but the support you have. Has being with MortgageRight changed your perspective then on the industry as a whole?
Very easy in this industry to be negative, because you feel many times that you're fighting an uphill battle. You're fighting underwriters. You're fighting against your processor, even sometimes when you're like, no, this is a good transaction. This is a make sense deal. And unfortunately in our business, it's not necessarily makes sense. Does it fit into the parameters? Does it fit into our guidelines? It doesn't matter if this person has great credit, tons of equity. They don't have any income. They're not going to qualify. I mean, so those things definitely, it can be very challenging. It can be, easily you can get negative about it. But I can sit there and tell you, I mean, this is no joke. I mean, this is a true story. 2 days ago, it was Thursday of last week. So today is January 30th. So whatever day that was, I had an underwriter who conditioned the file that was, in my opinion, a little excessive. And and I'm sitting there, and I had a moment, and we all know, or if you don't know, it's very easy to be negative, right? And it's harder to stay positive all the time. And I don't know why life is like that, but it shouldn't be, but it is. But and I was literally sitting there like stewing over this. Like my processor, my loan officer assistant, and it was a very complex file. Multiple properties, multiple businesses, and not complex. It was actually pretty simple, but just a lot of documentation needed. So yeah, so I was like stewing. I'm like, we did all this preliminary work, our due diligence, and we just got like bombarded with files. And sometimes that happens. These underwriters are human. I mean, it happens. It's not the standard. And it was one of those things where I think there was so much, maybe they were just kind of covering their tail a little bit. And I'm sitting there and I'm stewing a little bit. And I was like, and I text the head underwriter of MortgageRight. She called me back and she said, look, I get it. Let me look at it. Don't sweat this, and sure enough, about an hour later, the majority of all those conditions were cleared. And she was like, you guys did a great job. I'm using this as a teaching tool for my underwriting staff, so, they're constantly helping and educating their own staff to make certain that, again, it's hard enough to develop business as it is, especially after this 2023 was not stellar year for the majority of loan officers out there. Okay. I personally have had a couple loan officers that left the industry as entirely. They're no longer doing mortgages because they just couldn't take it anymore. They weren't making the money that they needed. So, it felt sort of defeating when I got that list of conditions. But again, as I've mentioned a few times, if you reach out and you express what your concerns are, they will look at them. They will stop. She stopped what she was doing to help me sort of get off the ledge, if you will, because, they do understand that we are out there hustling. We are out there developing relationships. It's very challenging in the past year and it can be defeating. So
Actually, this would be can you walk me through what are some of your least favorite things about being a branch manager in general, like without MortgageRight support? And then let's talk about some of your favorite things. I know some of your least favorite things are already HR, compliance, P&L, these things that MortgageRight kind of took off your plate, but just you as a branch manager are not very pleasurable to do as part of the job.
It's never exciting to field a question or a complaint, from somebody. I think, I really try to educate my loan officers, educate my buyers, educate the real estate agents, realtors out there. However, things happen, and it may not even necessarily be your fault, but many times in the mortgage industry, we're the fall guy or girl. So, that to me sometimes can be defeating, but again, I definitely used to take it more personal when I was a little bit younger. It would ruin my day if I had to field a complaint. Now it's become just a part of the job where, it's not my favorite thing to do, but, and I use this quote quite a bit where I feel like I should probably know whoever said this, but it's, your success in business and your success in life can be determined by the amount of uncomfortable conversations that you have. So in other words, if you are just willing to have that uncomfortable conversation with that borrower, with that agent, no, I don't love it. I don't love that at all. But if you sort of rip the Band-Aid off, you get it over, they know that you are a man or a woman of your word, you're willing to take care of it, you're ready to step in and fix whatever issue that there may have been. Again, don't love it, but it's part of the job. It's part of what we do. That to me is part of the job that I don't love to do. Of course, I want it to all be rosy and perfect all the time, but it doesn't happen. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of hands and cooks in the kitchen, hands in the pot, all the different things, right? So that part is not my favorite.
Well, what are some of your favorite things? Just the top highlights.
I love getting out there and speaking with people, in front of people. I love speaking to at events, educating people, demystifying the common issues with real estate and mortgages as a whole, and I don't want to say just educating people, but really, and I'm not saying, and nor am I saying I'm going to prove you wrong. I mean, it's about, just, really letting people know, this is really how it works. It doesn't necessarily work this way. Let me explain why. Those things I really enjoy. I love when, we have, when I get to watch my team get together, hang out, and outside of the office, because we do have I have a pretty awesome nucleus of loan officers that have been with me for a long, long time. And, we have become sort of a family. And truth be told, I had a loan officer leave me. He took a bonus and he came back. He came back because, the grass wasn't greener. That's what he was promised. And that's not just a testament to me. That's not to toot my own horn. That's really, a testament to the culture that MortgageRight has. But that was when that happened, that really hurt. Like that one, like cut deep, that one was a challenge, but because of the culture that we created here in the office and MortgageRight culture, we were able to get a top producing loan officer back on my team, back in MortgageRight. And, he's back part of the boys, just like he was before he left. So that's fun, and enjoying those times, when it's good and it's bad, even when times aren't going crazy, wild, and interest rates are low, and you're so busy and you're making all this money, when it's a little bit slower and you can still go out and hang out and have a beer with the guys and the team and just have that camaraderie, that's of course fun. Love it.
And off the top, or just to clarify too, like what's the size of like your branch? And like how big was it when you started out? How much has it grown, just for my own awareness?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I first started with MortgageRight, it was me, a processor, and two other loan officers at the time. And then, we've grown to 12 loan officers. We've, dropped down to 4 or 5, built it back up to 12. And now we're currently sitting at 7 loan officers, and with a head processor. Over the years, I've had, multiple processors at one time. I had, of course, during the booms, we had 4 processors working in here in the office. So we were really, we were cranking out. We were doing 120 transactions a month. So we were really busting it at that particular time. And so, yeah, we've, as the market allows us, we increase, and then as the market pulls back a little bit, so do we. And that's how we've been able to stay agile enough to, be in this business a long time. I've 22 years. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm one of the old guys now in the industry where, for a long, long time, I felt like I was the new guy and the young guy, but that's not the case anymore. Most of the folks I talk with, they got in after the crash. There's not many that have been here through the crash. And, and here we are today, still cranking along.
Let's talk a little bit at the end here about BranchRight, the recruiting arm of MortgageRight. What advice would you give someone who has heard about MortgageRight, doesn't know much about it, but is interested in talking to BranchRight about making the jump? Like, what advice would you give someone interested in talking to BranchRight?
I think the key is just keep an open mind, and listen. A lot of times when you're a branch and you're a successful branch and you talk to the recruiting team, I've seen it for years. It's more about you want to talk about how well you're doing. Well, sure. And otherwise we wouldn't be contacting you. MortgageRight wouldn't be contacting you if you weren't doing well. I get it. That's why you're on our radar. But here's how we can help. So I would say if you take some time, listen to what Mike and Alvaro have to say and how they can add value to your branch, to your loan officers, and help you exceed the current goals that you're doing, I think you'll be incredibly surprised. I think you'll be incredibly happy that you've just taken the time to listen.
Any last minute thoughts or questions that I didn't ask that you want to share? No pressure, but just if I left anything out.
Yeah, the culture is great. The guys are great. The girls are great. The staff is great. The processing. I've got no bad things to say. Of course, there's going to be scenarios, where things don't go exactly as planned. But overall, the MortgageRight family is where I plan to be for a long time. Until they kick me out, I plan to be here as long as possible. And look, truth be told, I can go anywhere. Okay, but I choose to be at MortgageRight. That's where I want to be. That's where I will take my family, and I will be with MortgageRight and be with the MortgageRight team and the Discover Right team and the Branching Right team till they, like I said, kick me out.
I'm so glad I asked that last question now because that was phenomenal.